There are some people who live by great values, but don't get much done. There are others who get a lot done, but whose values leave much to be desired. Our next speaker has started a tremendously successful company called Brightwet that is also founded on some really wonderful core values. It serves socially conscious companies and nonprofits with communications, digital, video support, and does so while reinforcing their commitment to community. I first met this next guest through his volunteer community work to support artists, just another indication of a man who seeks to live by his values. Please welcome Steve Rio.
So in my early 20s, through my teens and my early 20s, I was trying to make it as a musician. And I realized how expensive it was going to be to become a rock star. And so I made a really bad choice. I walked into a bank, and I talked my way into a $20,000 business line of credit without really a business. It wasn't Scotiabank, don't worry, guys. And I took that money along with all the money I had on my credit cards, and I made the worst investment of my life. And to cut a long story short, within about 5 days, the money was gone. And I was, just like that, I was $35,000 in high-interest credit debt with nothing to show for it, doing shows, doing freelance web gigs in my early 20s. And I was so embarrassed, and I just felt stupid. And so I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my girlfriend. Worst of all, I couldn't tell my parents or my family. And then I just went on living with this secret and this shame and the guilt and with this debt. And I was paying twice my rent in monthly interest payments, not even scratching the surface of the debt. And this just went on. And so 1 year went by, 2 years went by, and suddenly it had been 5 years. And I hit a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I needed to reset my life. I needed to clear my head. There was no backpack trips to Europe. But I realized that riding a bicycle was free. And somehow I got into my head that I was going to bike to Mexico. I blame Jack Kerouac or one of those guys for this idea. I'd never ridden a bike anywhere in my life further than my house to my high school. I never fixed a flat tire. I didn't really know anything about anything. But it seemed like the perfect plan, and frankly, the alternative was a depression that was getting worse and worse. And so I set a date 2 weeks from the day, and I started planning. And along the time I was planning, I got another idea. YouTube had come out that year, so I put a video of myself. I set up a camcorder on a piano. There's no iPhones. And I recorded a video of myself saying hello. And then I wrote this long letter, and I explained what I was going to do and what I was feeling and all this stuff. And I used MySpace, which was the big social network at the time. And I sent it out to people in all the little towns that I was going to pass through on my bike trip, and I asked if I could crash at their house. And if not, maybe they could pass the email on. And so I stayed up late one night, and I sent as many emails as I could, and I went to bed. And the next morning, I woke up, and I was blown away. I had received over 150 invitations from people all the way down the coast to stay in their homes. And over the next 48 hours or so, they just kept coming, and I received over 500 invitations in that time. And it was this moment when I realized, this trip had been born out of desperation and loneliness. It was kind of like my ride into the abyss. Maybe I was never going to come back. And suddenly it was this trip of kind of magic, and it was the start of this discovery. Anyway, this was days before I was set to leave, so I answered as many emails as I could, and I started pedaling. You can't see this photo, but my mom, I cropped her out because she probably doesn't like the photo because she's so nervous. You can see how nervous she is. But that's me taking off, and for the next 5 weeks, this was my life. I rode every day, and every night I'd arrive in a new town, and I'd meet someone new who would welcome me into their home, and we'd break bread, and we'd tell stories, or we'd go for beers, and if I had more time, I'd tell you stories from people from every walk of life. And I got to spend between 6 and 8 hours a day on my bike. But I spent between 6 and 8 hours a day on my bike, alone with the road and my thoughts, views like this. You know, I was in such a dark headspace going into this trip, I didn't even realize I was about to bike down one of the most beautiful coasts in the world. It didn't even occur to me. So I hit the Oregon coast and I was kind of blown away. But I had a lot of time to reflect, and I realized that I'd let one bad decision completely change the way I looked at the world and completely change the way I looked at myself. And I let one bad decision completely change my relationship with money. You see, every time I thought about money or getting paid for something I was doing, all I could think about was the debt. And when I thought about the debt, I was flooded with shame and guilt. And so I hated money. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. And I've never really been someone who's overly motivated by money so much, but this was really different. This was like a deep phobia. And all along the trip, I would meet people and I'd tell them what I was doing. And they were so excited for what I was up to and they wanted to support. And the way they supported was they insisted on buying me a coffee on the side of the road or buy me a beer or buy me a meal. And I realized that money is just energy. You know, money is just one of the ways we exchange energy as humans. And like any type of energy, there needs to be a clear pathway for it to be exchanged. And I was completely blocked. And if that didn't change, nothing was going to change. It didn't matter how hard I worked or what I tried to do. And it was on a hill like this one in California one morning, I realized that this could be my excuse for failure or the story of my success. And it was a crystallizing moment. And it just sort of clicked. And as soon as I got back, I stopped calling it my debt, and I started referring to it inside my head as my education. So I had to completely reprogram my thinking around this. And I sat down with my parents and I told them what had been going on, which was a huge relief for me and for them, I'm sure, as well. And I started telling the story to people close to me, and this was my way of getting rid of the guilt, of letting it go, and the secret was out. And then I got back to work, doing pretty much the same type of work I was doing before I left, just with a new perspective. And within 2 months, I won the biggest contract of my life that I'd ever seen at the time. And within 10 months, this thing that had been weighing over me for 5 years, that I had no idea how I was ever going to get out of, was gone. And I could easily say that for all of the hours I've spent, for the 25,000 hours I've spent becoming an expert in my field, the hours I spent on my bike really looking at where I was blocked and really looked at what was going on inside was the most valuable time I've ever spent on my career. And we all have these parts of our mind, these moments in time where we're told that something's not possible, or that we're not capable, or we're not worthy of something. And we create these walls. And these walls, like our mind, are extremely powerful. And it doesn't matter how hard you push against them or how much work you do or how hard you do, until you really take the time to look and understand how those walls got there and how each of those bricks got there, and you start to deconstruct them, nothing changes. But it's possible for these things to change. And on the other side of these walls is a world where you are infinitely capable and infinitely deserving of whatever it is you're willing to dream about and willing to work hard for. Thank you very much.